Good morning, welcome back to the 120th. Today we are talking about the Bronica ETRS. This is Bronica's first 6x4.5 camera. Before this one they were all 6x6s. This is, you might call it the third or the fourth generation of Bronica cameras. If you count the first ones, the Z and the D and potentially the S as the first generation, and then S2, S2A. EC as a second generation, and then came the ETRS and GS and the SQs, which look very similar, have a lot of design similarities, but obviously the ETR, ETRS and ETRSi are 6x4.5 cameras. Obviously the SQ side of things with the 6x6, the tried and tested. Other than the fact that it's a 6x4.5 camera, a lot of it follows the same kind of design plan or design concept that we saw in the earlier Bronica models. So fully modular system, everything is removable, everything is changeable and switchable to your heart's content. So that there is the body of the camera. Unlike previous Bronicas, for this generation, the SQ and the ETR, ETRSi, ETRSi, they switched to leaf shutters, so shutters in the lenses rather than focal plane shutters, which we saw on all previous Bronica models. Not entirely clear why that was. Could be because they were easy to make, or how fragile the focal plane shutter was on the previous versions, because it was, that any shutter mechanism, because of the speed that it has to move and the accuracy with which it has to move, is a fragile mechanism. And with a focal plane shutter, then once the back is off, that focal plane shutter is susceptible to damage. Whereas with a leaf shutter, it's fully contained, it's fully encased within a lens. So slightly more secure. That may have been a reason, maybe not, who knows. But long story short, they moved on to a leaf shutter. So the shutter is now stored in the lens, and the inside, the main body of the camera is just a central nervous system for the electronics, but also the mirror and viewing screen. Interestingly as well, in this camera, they moved away from a return mirror to a non-return mirror. So on this camera, you fire the shutter, the mirror stays up until you wind on to the next frame, which brings the mirror back down again. Unlike the S2A, there is a battery required for this one. Without the battery, it will function. So there are some cameras obviously out there that will not function, that require a battery that will not function without a battery. This will function, but you can only shoot at 1/500th of a second. So for all other shutter speeds, you need the battery, because the speed of the shutter is electronically controlled. Detachable backs, as before. The standard back for this one was a 120 6x4.5 back. You could also get a 220, and you could also get a 135 back as well for it. Unlike the S2A, you can pull out the dark slide with the back off. Don't know why you want to, but you can. Although apparently you can't put it back in again. Very interesting. Didn't know that. This was brought out as a major competitor to the best-selling Mamiya 645, which you've seen on this channel before, which were selling like hotcakes in Japan in the 80s and so late 70s, early 80s. So Bronica decided to bring out a competitor, and in my opinion, they did very well at competing with that Mamiya 645. I actually didn't own one of these. I didn't own any 645 cameras for a long time. Then I got a Mamiya 645, and then I thought I really ought to try an ETR or ETRS or ETRSi. So I got hold of this one, and I love it. And I mean, I love it. It's actually a really good camera. Cracking sharp images. This one in particular is performing fantastically well, despite me putting it through some hardships. If you don't follow me on TikTok, go find out on TikTok what I've done to this camera. But it is absolutely holding its own. It's doing really well. Really thrilled with some of the photos that I've had out of this. They are tack sharp. Obviously you'll get some variation between the lenses. This is the stock 75mm f2.8, and it is a gorgeous lens. I also have 40mm. I mean, I've got a whole set of lenses now for one reason or another, but I have already decided that I'm hanging on to this. Many cameras pass through my hands. This one is a keeper. I did not keep the Mamiya 645, that came and went. But this one is staying with me. I've really been enjoying shooting it, it's getting some lovely photos out of it, and it's just slightly smaller and lighter than the Bronica S2A and lighter than a lot of my cameras, especially the 6x6s. The 6x6s tend to be just that little bit bigger. So it's quite small, quite compact, easier to carry around, and that's exactly what I've been doing. I've had a fair few trips to London recently for work, and have taken this with me. I am in fact off to London again tomorrow, so let's take the camera with us. Let's give it a run, and let's come back and talk a little bit more about it. See you out there. Right then, I'm down in London today for work, so I have brought the ETRS with me. I think we're going to start with, I've got the 75mm on at the moment. Let's change that for the 40mm. Currently wandering around this beautiful little like gardens, almost like a private park. I'm going to start with some Fuji Pro 400H and try and pick up some of this colour. Although it's not very sunny, so the colours won't be as punchy as they might be. But I'm sure we'll still get something out of it. So let's start with that. Start lined up, and then I'll pop that back in the right way around. And let's go take some photos. I think what I'm trying to get this morning is a bit of flowers and colours with something that says London in the background. So we'll start with that, and then I think I might switch to a roll of FP4 and go and take some photos of some joggers. Let's go see what we see. Right, I'm just set up on these flowers here, but with the path taking up about half the frame. So I've just got to wait for somebody to walk down that path. I've set the, close the iris right up and set the shutter speed to 1/8 of a second. To open up to f11 and 1/8 of a second. Right, let's move on. Right, and this is Gabriel's Wharf. This place is, well, used to be, when I used to live in London, this place used to be thumping in the evenings. But obviously nothing open in the mornings. It's quite cool. Even 40mm isn't wide enough now. There might be more here. Right, let's wander that way onto the South Bank. And here we are onto the Thames. Typical London. There's the city down there. Let's grab a couple of big wide London shots, eh? And that is a film done. Take the Pro 400H out and put that somewhere safe. Let's get a roll of FP4. And I'm going to photograph some of these joggers. So do a slightly slower shutter speed, probably something in the region of a 15th or so. Try and get some blurring, some movement on the joggers. So I'll just do some quick light meter readings to see what I need to do to get this right, and then I'll take some photos of some joggers. Right Right then, back at my desk. What do you think of those? I thought they were alright. Do you know what I really want to do though, is I want to show you some of the other photos that I've been taking with this. I've had this camera out, been taking some wildlife shots with it. I've been taking some shots of friends out on walks. Took it out to South Africa for a little bit, had some fun with it out there. I've been doing all sorts with it and taking it more far and wide than I ever have done with my Bronica S2A, mainly because it's so much lighter and smaller and easier to carry. This of course is a Bronica ETRS, which is the kind of middle version. The ETR came first, then the ETRS, then the ETRSi. There was an ETR-C as well after the ETR. The ETR came out in 1976, this one came out in 1978. I believe there was two kind of iterations of the ETRS as well. There was a slight update made to it in its later production years, and this is the second version of the two. The first version of the ETRS was from 1978 to 1982, and then there was a slightly upgraded version which came out in 1982 and ran through to 1989 and then ended the production run. So my thoughts on the Bronica ETRS. I think this particular version, with it being a little bit later in the production run, I couldn't tell you exactly when, but let's assume it's like 1985, 86. So in vintage camera terms and analog photography terms, that's a pretty young camera. I think also it benefited from being the second version, but the second version of the ETRS not being too ambitious as far as design was concerned. So I have had the back off this, I have had the sides and the bottom off this to do some just running repairs where I was a little bit careless with it perhaps. And it's pretty simple inside. As far as the electronics are concerned now, none of these Bronica cameras are simple mechanically, but it's not quite as crazy as the Bronica S2A. If anything, it's slightly easier to follow. The S2A was the kind of last in a breed of electronics free cameras, and it came at a kind of a cusp, a turning point. Mechanical ability and mechanical design had reached a peak and had become so complex and so fine-tuned that Bronica S2A is just a maze of cogs and sprockets and clutch mechanisms and pulleys and ribbons and levers, and it is just, inside those cameras is wild, and that is why you won't find too many people working on them. This, as a next generational step up, does away, or rather replaces, some of that seriously fine-tuned mechanics and replaces it with some basic electronics. And the second version didn't upgrade the electronics, it just fine-tuned the overall design. And that's a great thing, because that means that this camera is still just about comprehensible by the lay person with a pack of screwdrivers. I was having some issues with it. I opened it up. There's one chip inside it, and chips are obviously where we get lost. Chips are the point where you cease to be able to follow what's happening in a wiring design. And I was able to follow each wire from source to conclusion and understand pretty much what each wire did and what was happening. And therefore established that there was, what I found inside the cameras, there was nothing actually wrong. I think the battery compartment, the battery contacts had unseated slightly, and was able to just push them back in, clip them back in, and the camera works again, and it's working fine, working really well. So as far as a camera from a certain era, this is almost the perfect balance. It's just before cameras got crazy complicated with the electronics, and just after they were being built with no electronics and therefore wildly complicated mechanics. It's almost the best of both worlds. Because this was a very popular system, it is also worth noting there are an absolute boatload of accessories for it. There are loads of lenses. I've got a macro bellows. I've got a metering prism, which is very easy to fit. You literally push one button, slide the waist level finder off, pop in your metering prism, clip it into place, and you're in business. That one I picked up for not much money, and it works perfectly. There is almost every accessory that you could hope for. There is of course the standard speed grip, which is the death of wind-on arms worldwide. So this one is actually running on a 3D printed winder arm. because an original arm will set you back almost as much as a new camera. So there we go, not too much more to say about it, short of if you're in the market for a 645, and I do like 645 as a frame size, and you get that huge jump in resolution and film real estate from 35mm, but you still retain that rectangular shape, that aspect ratio which you've become so familiar with, and which I actually prefer. In all the years that I've spent shooting 6x6, I've never really got to a point where I really like the square frames. I still hanker for a 4x3 or a 6x4. So yeah, or a 6x4.5, no less. So all in all, genuinely chuffed with this camera. It's a keeper. This one is going to stay with me. I have been buying up various accessories because I have big plans for what I want to do with this camera. You may have recently seen some of my attempts at shooting wildlife on large format and the struggles that I had with that and trying to operate with all that kind of cumbersome equipment. This is the total opposite. I've got some long lenses, I've got a doubler, I'm going to put it on a tripod and let's go out and let's shoot some wildlife. I'm really looking forward to that. So lots of big plans for this one. More to come from the ETRS on this channel. It is going to become a stalwart, a mainstay of my camera stable. Loads of other stuff coming up on the channel, lots more large format coming up, lots more of my kind of experimental stuff that I've been talking about for ages. Next video out I think is probably going to be me and some antique lenses. I have gradually gathered a number of antique lenses from a number of different sources. And I'm now at a stage where I want to take them all out. I want to run them side by side and see what the difference is, see what we get from these antique lenses. What is the fuss? Everybody's talking about antique lenses. Everybody loves, going on about the unique flavor that they give to images. Well, I'm going to take 4 or 5 out with me on a shoot and we'll run them all side by side and let's see if we can tell what those flavors are and whether we all like them. That's the plan for that. And then after that, we've got some glass plates. We've got some dry tin types from Zebra. Looking forward to that. So yeah, loads coming up on the channel. If you're not currently subscribed, please do like and subscribe. Some really interesting stuff and some crazy experiments coming up. In the meantime, Bronica ETRS. I think it's a cracking camera. If you haven't tried one, go try one. I think you will fall in love with it, as I have done. Okay, that's enough. Goodbye.